Here's why I never advise for people to invest in commercial real estate before they invest in residential real estate. So our investment strategy is all around building your capital first and then using that capital to go and invest in an asset that'll produce income, which we choose commercial real estate for that asset. Now, the reason I haven't personally, and the reason I tell people not to invest in commercial real estate to begin with, is because commercial real estate doesn't grow like residential real estate does. What I mean by that is with residential real estate, there are constantly sales happening in that marketplace. If you buy a property today in suburb 1, there's a good chance that 50 other properties in that suburb will sell between now and the end of the year. And hopefully those properties are selling for more and more, which means your property is going to be revalued at a higher price point. So you can actually release equity from a residential property much faster than you can if it was a commercial property, because the commercial real estate market is a much lower volume market, not as many properties sell, and generally the value of the asset is tied much more to the rental income that asset produces versus what other properties are selling for. So hypothetically speaking, if your commercial rent in your asset is tied to inflation, for example, inflation is running at 2.5% per annum, you're going to get a 2.5% rental increase next year, which isn't going to make a huge amount of difference to the value of your asset. Now, if you go back 5 years or 4 years when we had a huge inflationary period, you could have had a lot of growth in a short period of time, but then you might go through a period where there isn't a lot of growth for a long period of time, which means you're essentially going to hold an asset that you can't get equity out of until we go through a higher inflationary period. So residential assets are much easier to access equity in shorter periods of time to then reinvest in more assets. Now, when you have a larger chunk of capital, which is essentially a larger chunk of money, you can then sell your residential assets down, use that chunk of money to go buy a higher dollar value commercial assets, and then they will start producing income for you. But if you never build the capital, it is very hard then to go into commercial, because if you went and bought a commercial property first, and then you didn't have a lot of growth on that asset for 3, 4, 5 years after you purchased it, to get to the second and the third and the fourth property is going to take you much longer, versus if you went residential first, built your capital over that 5 to 10 year period, and then rolled into commercial. So I always advise, don't invest in commercial first, invest in residential. And then when you get to a point where you've got a large enough capital base, then you can go into commercial.